I did. Alright, hello and welcome to Eastern Marshlands Evening with Comrades. I'm Dip Dap, and we'll start with people who are familiar and then get to the new person. So first is Pac-Man.
Hi everybody, I'm here to start World War III.
Next is Senna.
Hello.
Theo.
I am an illegitimate state north of Iceland.
And then
You're
a
a
new
cutie.
person. Calliope, is it? Or say it?
Calliope.
Alright.
Believe it or not, Posadas Pac-Man pronounced the name the first time right, and it's because he studies or played Company of Heroes 2, which has the Calliope, which shoots a bunch of rockets at people and murders them. So I'm sure he's gonna have a few of those during World War III.
I mean, like, I prefer Katyushas for the meme aspect, but you know, Calliopes work too.
Yeah, and I'm from Shonen Ronin. It's a YouTube channel. We've even hosted Posadas Pac-Man a couple times. It's leftist anime politics. Fun stuff.
You know, the advantage of Katyushas is that you can strap into just about anything. You can
Well,
fire
which
them
is
from
great.
a Hilux.
Well, our first topic tonight is to talk about the worldwide protests that are still happening. So, where do we want to start first? What country? Because it's a lot.
Why don't we just start with Lula is free.
Well, let's start in Iraq, actually.
Alright, let's talk about Iraq.
Oh, that's fun.
So for the past few days, there have been massive, and I mean fucking massive, riots in Baghdad. The police had to withdraw from several parts of the town, and the military had to be called in. And a few hours ago, actually, a US military base was hit with 17 Katyusha rockets.
Ooh.
I mean,
Not clear who hit them with 17 Katyusha rockets yet, because it was in the green zone, so like
no
safe
joke.
zone. Like, could be ISIS remnants, but they never really had a strong a presence in Iraq. So it was probably the Iranian-backed militias that are operating in like central and eastern Iraq.
Oh God.
Speaking
I'm
of...
so sorry about
Exactly.
my dog. Her
sounds
mom
kinda
is
like
here.
one.
She's excited. I'll be right back.
Speaking of Iraq, there are, as far as we are aware right now, tear gas canisters are now killing protesters.
Yep.
So I think they've killed over 100 now, right? Like in total.
Yeah.
Because in Baghdad on the 25th, they killed 16.
Didn't they also open fire on the crowd?
Yes, they did. And the guy that threw the shoe at Bush was there.
well, that's cool.
He got
Oh,
shot
yeah,
at.
I remember what happened. The police opened fire on the protesters, and when they saw that, yeah, they just shot into the crowd, and the crowd isn't dispersing. They basically shot themselves and fled the scene.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, if I had a couple thousand angry, probably armed Iraqis running at me, I'd probably move too. Like, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure I'd. But, you know.
Because I'm gonna put it like this: the Iraqi police wouldn't have enough bullets to take care of all of these protesters.
Nope.
So there's now been 105 confirmed dead by the Iraqi High Council for Human Rights. And there's been over 5,600 injuries.
Oh yeah, and there have been solidarity protests that have sprung up in southern Syria, in Saudi Arabia.
I am so sorry about that. I'm back.
It should also
Uh,
be noted, the highest ranking cleric in Iraq is saying they should meet the protesters' demands already.
Well, I'm really loving that freedom and democracy that America brought to Iraq.
I
fellas.
know, right?
don't
It's
know
so
about you.
great. Because
Uh,
America.
You know, mass murdering protesters. It's a good old American tradition.
Yep.
We've got to love it.
I mean, it is an American tradition.
Battle of Blair Mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
State.
but there was also a smaller solidarity protest in Lebanon.
Uh-huh.
But well, there's a reason that there wasn't a larger protest.
They're
about
dealing
this
with
in
their own
Lebanon.
protests.
Yeah. Dip Dap. Talk. Talk about that.
So in Lebanon, they're still going on, as we've been talking about in recent weeks, and the crisis is now affecting two very important industries.
Cock and ball torch. Sorry.
Fuel and medicine.
Didn't even acknowledge it.
And Lebanon's local currency is fucking floundering. Let's see, Lebanon currency to USD. And let's see how much it's changed. Over the past, year, it's just fucking dropped. Let's see. $1 is currently 1,500 Lebanese pounds.
Oh boy.
And the World Bank is now wanting Lebanon to form a new cabinet.
Oh yeah, because
Protests have been going on for just over 3 weeks. Which means for us that doesn't feel like they're stopping.
I had some good news out of Lebanon though as well.
What?
There were very, very large feminist protests in Lebanon. Like I think that
Well, yeah.
the Women's Liberation Front, I think they're called, held a rally of about I think 11,000 people in Beirut,
Right.
where they demanded an end to theocracy and an end to a lot of things really.
Well, look, until the problem is the Islamic world is inherently hyper-conservative by
Right.
nature, and it's
Has
gonna
been ever since the. So
you can't blame the Brits for this, Theo, as much as you
No.
want to.
Salafism, as we know it, and that the fucking what was he count? No, the Prince of Saud,
Yeah.
in
That wonderful
the
person.
the 1870s, 80s, doesn't matter. He had this then fringe conception of how to run his religious institutions, which specifically meant that he was the second highest religious authority in the country, and the highest religious authority was under his government's direct control. That's what we today know as fucking. What's that tendency called?
Wahhabism, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, 1870s, 1890s, the Brits and the French, they wanted the fucking Ottomans to get out of the Levant. So what did they do? They sent this lovely prince money and guns and more money and resources. He uses those resources to spread his specific religious ideals to suppress theological minorities, to suppress ethnic minorities.
It's also important to because Gordo's in the chat talking about Hezbollah. Hezbollah's taken the side of the government and they're fighting the protesters.
Yep.
They actually did try to interfere with that protest of the Women's Liberation Front. Still don't know if that's actually the name. That's just what I've seen them referred as. And the protesters drove them out of from the square, which, to me implies a good trend that
Very good trend.
Lebanese left is starting to distance itself quite heavily from Hezbollah, which out of necessity it had to associate itself with because of Israel.
Yeah.
Well, look, all I'm gonna say is there seems to be a pattern here. Not sure what, but it's almost as though, religious organizations based in an ideology that's about 2,000 years old might have a propensity to conservative politics. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
That's why the Vatican isn't in the UN.
Dude.
Fun fact: the Vatican can't join the UN because it doesn't want to sign the UN's human rights charters.
Because it will violate every single tenet of them, pretty much.
Because they have laws that are
technically a violation of human rights.
You cannot employ a woman in the Vatican. Anyway, even a convenience store, you can't employ them there. Well,
it's every male must be circumcised.
Yeah. Things like that are against the human rights charters. Now, it's not that big of a deal because, how big is the Vatican?
A few square miles.
Yeah. It's just part of a city.
It just has a lot of theological power.
Yeah, that's the problem. And in a lot of Central European countries, like my own, Austria, holds some degree of not political influence, not anymore anyway, but it holds some sway over administration because they own a lot of land in the cities.
Right.
Well, they own a lot of the old buildings, like the monasteries and the old churches.
Speaking of church, though, the Chilean vandals right now?
Sorry, what?
Chileans have raided a Catholic church and burnt the things inside.
That's fucking powerful.
Hey.
Back to Catalonia, I see.
I don't want to sound too gratuitous here on my anti-theistic bent, but let's just say after my early education, it's kind of personal. All I'm gonna say is there is a line in The Red Army is the Strongest, which is the Revolutionary Military Council calls us into the fray, burning down prisons and churches in our wake. And to be honest, critical support for the abolition of the church. In fact, uncritical support. Burn it. Burn it all. Burn every last one.
Just don't
not
do
the buildings. Just throw them out. I want to keep the monuments.
Keep the building. Also, don't burn the people inside like they did in Catalonia. Most of those priests didn't do anything wrong.
Except fiddle kids, but anyway, moving on.
I'm not sure the Chilean church was burnt. I just saw one Chilean church. It was spray painted.
No. They went into the church, took the shit out of the church, and burnt the religious artifacts.
Yeah. And this is because Chile, like Spain was, Austria used to be, isn't anymore as much because we're bureaucrats now.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church still holds sway over politics in Chile, just like it does in Spain, and then to a lesser extent in Italy.
Yeah.
like, the church has sort of influenced Chile's drive into fascism,
Into at least yeah.
Into Catholic nationalism specifically.
Right.
Because, you know, the reinstitution of bishops, reinstating their status as state officials, which they used to have in most countries. Now they don't really have anywhere other than in Spain, Chile now, and I think Brazil.
Like the most intensely Catholic places.
Yeah. And because of Catholic churches,
Right.
intense, political influence. Now, this is an organization that no one elected, that no one, has any sort of connection to. It's just some Argentinian dude sitting around in Rome, picking his nose, telling us what to do for the last 600 years.
Well, it wouldn't be Argentinian then, but I get what you're saying.
Well,
The Pope is from Argentina.
The current one.
Right. If we move a little bit away from Chile, though, there's also protests still going on in Bolivia, Ecuador, and Haiti.
Yes.
To my understanding, the Haitians are the most radical out of all of these.
As tradition would demand.
They're the ones that burnt a fucking bank, I believe.
Yep.
Oh,
The bank, the Haitian Central Bank.
They burnt down the Haitian equivalent of the Federal Reserve. They went right into the middle and just fucking burned it down.
A Bolivian mayor was assaulted by protesters, and their hair was cut by protesters. It looked like they were covered in fake blood or possibly real blood.
Well, I know that.
Was she painted red for being like a communist or something? Is that what it was?
I don't know, actually.
No, I think what it was is that this is a strange trend that a lot of Latin countries have, where they throw animal blood at people.
Oh, it was
Protests.
doused her in red paint and paraded her through the streets. Patricia Arce. And she's loyal to Evo Morales.
I'm surprised they gave her any time to like speak, but they did.
Mm-hmm.
No, wait, the animal blood is a cultural festival. Theo, that's a different thing. Focus.
But you're cute.
And then in Ecuador, I think they're still having protests, which is mostly anti-austerity, and it's a lot of stuff about gas. The president still does not have popular support, and I don't know if they're out of out of the capital still like they were originally, because indigenous people are blocking Ecuador oil auctions to direct action to stop fucking Amazon deforestation. Apparently 3 weeks ago they had a deal, and that deal fell through. It seems.
Yeah, when that deal happened, it was like, wait, who does this benefit?
Because the indigenous groups are still fighting. Because Jesus Christ.
I don't want to get to meta on this one here, but this is just a weird, innocuous comment, but it just sort of struck me as could you imagine if people like Lenin or Marx or Engels or any of our great leaders in the past had access to the internet like we do?
God.
Because I'm just thinking about this, because all of the shit that we're talking about, I have not seen in the news anywhere.
Right.
No
Oh, yeah.
one's talking about it.
There's media blackouts going on.
The only
Yeah, I'm
places I
wondering where you guys find as much information about this stuff, because, like, I try and search things up because I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to learn a little more about this so I can actually contribute, and I can't fucking find things.
Usually I use LiveMap for a lot of stuff because it just marks, like, tweets that are made about, like, topics.
Okay.
No one talks. No one talks about anything in this world right now.
I
No one.
see bits and pieces of it on like sort of fringe news sites or on like news sites where they're like either looking at it in a negative way, usually, I think. Like the place I got the thing about the Chileans burning those religious icons was from Fox News, but they're obviously saying, this is a bad thing, don't do this. But I'm looking at it and being like, oh, hey.
Yeah, like... Also, the whole thing about, like, what if, you know, Marx and people like that had access to the internet, I'm just picturing Marx having a Twitter presence, and it sounds fucking terrible.
You know,
No, giving Mark's
He has,
Twitter
like, 30 banned accounts. He just wants to fight everyone.
Gord
It'd be hilarious. It'd be like watching a dumpster fire.
Gorda's in the chat just said Hong Kong. So, speaking of Hong Kong.
Okay, here comes the dip dab dab on Dengus half hour.
Okay, so someone died. Someone actually died, and I don't think it was a suicide this time. I think
nothing about to happen.
no, a police officer I think pushed someone off a ledge.
Jeez.
Oh yeah.
Well then.
Nothing is going to happen.
Chao Tsulok was a 22-year-old student, and police were like shooing protesters out of a parking garage, and he fell off of the parking garage onto concrete and hit his head. He died as a result of brain injuries, and people are very angry.
I can't imagine why.
People are probably going to get more violent after this. They're not going to take what the cops say, because the cops basically caused the death of someone now. I hope the Hong Kong people are done with it. That they just had it. Right? People have gone to that parking garage and have been laying bouquets on to a picture of Chow. And there's been like candles lit and like memorial services. And to quote a person who was interviewed by NPR, we will keep walking this path, not only for Chow, but all people who share the common value. End quote. See, they understand that they have solidarity now, because this person also said that, quote, before the movement, we assumed that Hong Kong people were selfish and cared for themselves. But in these 5 months, we showed that people are connected. We care for each other. Chow is like one of the family members in Hong Kong. End quote. This means that they are noticing a level of solidarity within the city. Well, this means something.
Yep.
And there's also accusations that a police officer is the one that pushed him off or chased him off. The police are denying this, but we don't know. It wouldn't surprise me, though.
Yeah. Hiya, what are you doing?
Even
Sorry, my cat is here.
even the fire department and medics don't like the police, because it seems as if the police were obstructing the ambulance workers from getting him to the hospital sooner, so he died.
Yeah.
Ah, lovely.
Just remember, ACAB doesn't mean American cops are bastards. It means all.
Yeah. Well, until we are in a post-capitalist society, yeah, ACAB is a thing.
I don't know. I'm like in the
No,
new like
all. No cops.
add the double C though. Like all capitalist cops are bastards. I don't know. I'm just more siding with that at
Right,
this point.
I'm
No.
going to say what I
No.
usually say
No.
in this.
I'm sorry.
It's-
Well, Calliope, you and I are surrounded by anarchists here, so it's
You're
a bit...
not surrounded by
it's a bit-
anarchists.
Yeah.
You've
I'm
got
just gonna hold
two
my tongue on the
anarchists and a
Hong Kong, 'cause
left-com.
I guess I'm the dingus that needs to get
No.
out. I'm sorry, guys.
what I'm gonna say right now is that the enforcement of, well, enforcement isn't even the right word. The guidelines by which social rules and the likes are going to be enforced in a socialist society are so radically different from what we now understand as a
Cop.
police that the term police should be retired.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Here's
I
the
would say
thing:
that
get rid of any position that leads to someone having that kind of authority over other people and not being immediately able to be held accountable to their actions in a way that is easy and accessible for the public
It
that
has
is
to
affected
be-
by them.
Yeah, it has to be
If
just
it doesn't meet those criteria, it's bad.
Yeah, it doesn't. It has to meet the same standards that any public official should be held under, which is to be directly accountable to the people that they are responsible for, meaning that people can recall them if they do not like them. This goes for representatives, but should also go for this.
Gordon in the chat said Hong Kong isn't leftist though, but the thing is that the Hong Kong police are a subordinate of the Chinese police, and some people still believe that that non-American cops aren't shit, or they might believe that that some people still believe in this East-West dichotomy, which is wrong. It doesn't exist. I'm sorry. I study this for a living. It's not real. It's honestly, it's one of the most Orientalist things to make the dichotomy of East-West. Stop making that dichotomy.
Capitalism is a global system. It doesn't stop at
Right. At a national border or at a fucking hemispherical border. It's everywhere.
I've been meaning to write a paper on why World War II was actually just the greatest asset heist in financial history.
Because it was. because it was. It's the second imperialist war. The second
No,
world
like,
imperialist war.
To clarify, that doesn't mean that the Nazis were good.
Right,
That's
right.
not-
Oh, no,
It
no,
does
no.
not. It does not. What I'm saying is, we cannot make the distinction that the Second World War was about the Holocaust, that we didn't know about the Holocaust until 1941, 2 years into the war. It is similar to World War One, just with worse actors.
Okay, when I bring this topic up, I always throw this piece of random trivia in. If you want to find the web, you can put it up in the chat. But anyone who talks to me about, why is capitalism so evil? Why is capitalism not like restricted by borders and shit like this? I simply say this, and I'm gonna put this link. I'm gonna send this link to DipDap, and he's gonna put it up in the chat.
All right.
If you want to know why capitalism, I mean, we're all leftists here, so we all really hate capitalism. But if you want to know why capitalism is transnational and trans ideology and, just basically does not give a fuck about your feelings, I just sent DipDap a link to a website. That website is called Dagesh America. Now, Theo knows exactly where I'm going with this just by hearing the name. But to be frank with you, the company responsible for building the gas distribution systems and for making Zyklon B for the death camps still exists, and it is the primary pesticide provider for the United States. You can look them up. They kept all their assets, all their money. In fact, the company that kept its money after funding and profiting from the Holocaust still exists, and it's one of America's largest pest control companies. You can check them out.
Yep.
What happened was the US Army seized their assets under IG Farben, deconsolidated, and then the majority of the shares of those deconsolidated companies were bought by, guess who? The United States.
Also,
And US investors.
I live in Alabama. Does anybody know where all the Nazi scientists went that got pardoned for war crimes? Where'd they go, guys? North
Kentucky.
Alabama.
And
Huntsville, Alabama. The place where we have a lot of NASA shit. I wonder why. Essentially, the Americans offered immunity to Nazi scientists. The question is, if World War II was just a humanitarian effort, would we have been giving fucking war criminals, like, absolute immunity just so they'll work for us? No. Absolutely fucking not.
You know for who it was? A humanitarian effort? For those people, the German and the Austrian resistance.
Partisans.
And the French resistance. Yeah, the people who weren't hunted by the Nazis and willingly gave up their fairly secure lives to
Fight them.
Fight the system.
It wasn't a humanitarian effort for America, for Britain, for any of the governments that were involved. There is no humanitarian government in that system. Because the thing is that World War II was not a humanitarian war. It was not some moral high ground ethical war. We did not know about the Holocaust until well into the war. Therefore, we cannot act as if it was about the Holocaust.
We're talking about the governments here, specifically.
Right, exactly.
Like there were obviously soldiers who
Knew.
Yeah, who went to join
Basically,
to fight the
you
Nazis
should give credit
because
to the Soviet Union.
No.
Oh man, Soviets were
Yeah.
fun, but I think
Actually,
yeah.
defeated the Nazis.
yeah, the people who actually defeated the Nazis. Shout out to my boys. But I'll be honest with you. What really strikes me is it goes further than what Dipdap said. Churchill received intelligence from Auschwitz escapees who ran through the pipeline through the Polish resistance. They knew the Holocaust was happening. The British government decided to do nothing.
Also, it's just like, oh, who
Worse
did they
than that,
study to, like, who did they study for their concentration camps? Oh, America.
at the Brits.
In fact, the Nuremberg laws were actually patented on the Jim Crow laws, believe it or not.
Wait, guys, what's that whole thing in... Wait, didn't Churchill do some shit in Bengal? I wonder what the fuck happened in Bengal. No one knows. No one
Nothing.
knows about fucking Bengal.
Nothing happened. I'm sure it was nothing.
The
Nothing,
English
because
pull a
it's gone
didn't.
now.
The English pull a did nothing. Okay, but we've gone on well enough of a tangent here. But what's important though is
Yeah.
start to go back to Hong Kong for one moment. I mentioned last week that Hong Kong was either on the verge of or entering a recession. The protests have caused a recession on the island.
Yeah, boys.
The economy of Hong Kong is tanking because of protests that have lasted now for 5 months.
Oh yeah, it has been 5 months now, isn't
It
it?
has been 5 months now. This is interesting. Are there any other protests anyone wants to mention?
There was some climate protests in Vienna the other day, but they were fairly, like, small in comparison, and there wasn't any, like, serious,
Clash.
Well-
escalation. Yeah.
Comrade Red Mushroom, who's a very good friend of this stream, was involved in the climate protests in Melbourne. in Australia recently,
Mm-hmm.
and he ran into the Victorian police, who
Ooh.
who basically, long story short, our friend Red Mushroom is still recovering from police brutality. So, so I hope everybody wishes him a
Oh yeah, Paris
happy
is still
day.
happening. It's been going on for almost a year.
Yeah.
Yay, yellow vests.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if it keeps going. If it's still going by May, I wonder how that's gonna go.
I know there's the yellow vest, but anywhere in like the noir guilds.
Gilles Noir.
Black
I
vest.
don't know about the Gilles Noir. And then
I'm just wondering. 'Cause
Königsmark in the
that
chat.
that was pretty interesting. I just don't know if it grew or anything.
Königsmark in the
last
chat,
checked.
though, talking about the anti-Turkey protests worldwide that are happening. Anyone know much on that?
No, but I don't think any of us are really surprised that
Yeah,
there
I
is
don't think
still
anyone would be
anti-Turkey.
surprised that Turkey's getting some flack, which we should talk about because France on our next topic.
Yay!
All right,
France is
Theo.
leaving NATO.
France might leave
It's-
NATO.
They say they're considering it. They're basically threatening the Americans to take action against Turkey. Because, as I mentioned several times, a few French servicemen were injured.
One died.
One of them died as a result of the Turkish attacks. Also, the Turks have restarted their offensive, which,
Ooh, okay then.
yeah,
Yeah.
the US, however, is back in those areas. And they have restarted their offensive. And
Ooh,
what happened the
so
last time that Turkish forces get anywhere near other Blue forces?
what happened?
Well, here's a recap of pretty much every encounter the Americans had with the Turkish military during this whole affair. There was the incident where an F-4, like a Turkish F-4, strafed an American military convoy.
Mm-hmm.
There was the time where they shelled a US military base and shot at it.
It's okay, guys. It was a mistake.
It's okay,
Promise.
guys. We supplied them with the weapons to begin with, so.
Not to mention, the Turks have been shelling civilian aid convoys. They basically stopped and basically looted a Norwegian aid convoy that was bringing supplies into a village.
Mm-hmm.
And it nearly escalated into them killing those people. All of those
More
are
about
war
it.
crimes, by the way.
War Crime Wednesday, guys,
Every day is War Crime Wednesday.
for Turks.
The
No.
Turkish military has, in this time, committed so many fucking violations of international law and have started shooting at their own alliance because at this point they're basically a Russian proxy ally. Wouldn't be surprised if the Turks pull out of NATO on their own at some point and go buddy
Well,
up with the
I mean,
Russians.
France wants them out already. And also Macron is already wanting to pull out of NATO because he wants to quote-unquote regain European sovereignty. And he says his first point is military sovereignty.
Yeah, which is a big point the Germans have as well.
Yeah. The thing is that Macron wants, because he I think he seems to believe that America and China will soon dominate the world so heavily that Europe won't matter anymore.
You know,
Right.
The idea of Angela Merkel with a fully functioning national military that's heavily armed and well supplied is kind of terrifying. Can we not?
Can we not?
I mean,
Can we actually not?
it's on the way. I've read a report recently indicating that the budget for the Bundeswehr is going to be heavily expanded over the next few years.
Ooh.
And I mean, fully functional defense army, heavily increased.
Uh-huh.
I hope the Belgians like building fences.
Well, okay, but this is the thing. This is the German post-war success story. The Germans will not need to invade Belgium. Do not need to invade the Netherlands. Do not need to invade France. These three countries, as well as Poland, are in the sphere. Right?
Right.
They are so heavily reliant on the German economy. They are pretty heavily reliant on German military production, aside from the Belgians. But they need Germany and the German military to function. The Germans won't need to invade Western Europe. They already control it.
Right.
And when the Germans decide to pull out of NATO, the entirety of Western Europe, because they're so intertwined with the Germans, are going to pull out too.
Whew.
You see, the Germans, over the past 20 years, have managed what Hitler couldn't do without firing a single shot and without committing any war crimes against Europeans.
Like, the thing
Although-
is,
Although, to be
Go
fair,
ahead.
Germans are probably the ones that the least least of the war crimes in Afghanistan.
To quote Macron, he is saying that Trump's actions regarding NATO have made the agreement brain dead.
well, here's the thing: if NATO disintegrates, it will be the single biggest strategic and political victory that Russia has had since the Second World War.
Yep.
Uh,
However, it
if-
also
Oh, NATO. If NATO
Also-
collapses, Russia is happy.
yeah, it also won't have to worry about its western borders anymore because look at it this way: because a new European defense alliance would spring up, and that would no doubt be led by the Germans and the French. And the Germans and the French have no interest in encroaching on, like, the Russian interests. That was always an American thing. The
right.
Americans wanted to expand NATO eastwards. The Germans were very skeptical when the Baltic states joined NATO. They thought, we shouldn't do that. That is going to antagonize the Russians. And they were right. It did.
Right.
Because we promised, right, we're going to take Poland and Czechoslovakia. That's going to join NATO. But after that, nothing else is. Then Romania joined NATO. And then Bulgaria joined NATO. And then the Baltics joined NATO. And then Hungary joined NATO. You see what I'm getting at?
Mm-hmm.
We broke NATO broke every treaty they've made with the Russians. The Russians have every reason to be agitated at them.
Peaceful Lebensraum. Peaceful Lebensraum.
Peaceful
telling you.
labor.
I'm telling you, the fucking... You see... Strategically, what the Americans did on accident, they took this German efficiency to get what you want, and just took the militarism out of it.
I mean, yeah, pretty much. They made it a diplomatic version.
And... You know... I could see stranger dystopias, or worse dystopias rather, than a Europe dominated by the Federal Republic of Germany, because honestly they're kind of... blech.
Mm.
As far as liberal states go, Germany's okay. I mean, compared to the US or the UK, it's definitely a step up.
I mean, anything
My
looks like
basic point
paradise
is,
to me.
yeah, my basic point is the Germans don't want to go to war. That's
Ever.
a good thing in my book.
They'll sell you weapons, though.
Oh yeah.
They'll
Hell
sell
yeah,
you
they'll
weapons
sell
to
you
go to
weapons.
war with someone else.
There's this German comedian, you know, Peter knows him, Volker Pispers. He has this joke whenever this comes up, where it's like, what was it about? A specific example, right? The Iran-Iraq war in the 80s.
Yeah.
No, you know, the Americans were supplying them. No, we weren't. You know, we Germans, well behaved, didn't do anything. We calmly and collectively condemned the conflict and supplied both sides with weapons
Duh.
because they did. During the Iran-Iraq war, they supplied Hussein with the warheads that he would use to load his poison gas under the NATO initiative that was started by the Americans under I
America.
forget whether it was Reagan or Bush.
America
Senior.
helped Saddam Hussein gas Kurds, and then, then we fought him later when he was no longer useful.
So, but the interesting thing there is that the Germans actually refused to terminate their contracts to send G3s to Iran after the Islamic Revolution, like everyone else did. So, yeah, they sent weapons to Hussein, but they also sent weapons to the Iranians, and they made a shit ton of money off of it.
You know, I really want to know how to get into this industry because I'm a sales rep by trade, and maybe I can make capitalism work for me. All I need to know is to work out how I can get to sell guns, because I'd make a fucking killing.
You have
It's like
Literally.
a Sorry to Bother You movie, but Poseidon's Pac-Man is now selling Katyushas to people. Over the phone.
Well, the
I'd
problem
love
is,
to sell guns over the phone. Are you kidding me? Like the episode of Deep Space Nine where fucking
Odo gets
Quark
into
starts
weapons,
working.
yeah,
He
Quark.
starts working with his cousin Gayla to sell weapons. Like I go into a showroom, like that Weapon X thing in Jordan. Like all right, who do you need to kill? Oh, you need to kill these people. Well, what you need is this bad boy. Slaps the top of a Titan missile. This thing. This thing right here. It comes with insurance too. If you lose this to operational failure, we'll give you 50% back, and you can buy another one.
You know,
like
you joke.
selling a car.
You joke, but the Americans actually literally do that.
I really want to know who gets that gig, because that'd be great.
All
It's usually
right.
generals.
I think we've kind of gone on a tangent again, so let's move on to the
I love
third.
tangents.
The third major topic is Liliana Segre, an Italian Holocaust survivor and politician. She is 89 years old and helped to pass an anti-hate speech law to establish like a council that reviews hate speech in Italy. Now, at the age of 13, she was in Auschwitz. But as of this new thing, she has been hit with a wave of anti-Semitic death threats.
Italy is quickly descending into a fascist state. They've threatened my country, Austria, with starting a border skirmish over the Brenner, which is our border mountains in Tyrol. Which has actually restarted South Tyrolean secessionist movements, which have been lying dormant for 40 years, because basically the Italian central government wants to take over directly and deny the rights for minority language, in that case German, to be spoken. Not just remove its administrative language status, forbid German to be spoken in that region. Again, that's a human rights violation. You're not even supposed to be doing that.
I don't think they care.
Now,
No, they don't, but...
let's see. Segre has gotten at least 200 hate messages a day. This just shows that anti-Semitism and reactionary ideas are alive and well, and that they must be stomped out because the paradox of tolerance.
Yeah.
We can't just let these people do this because, in particular, the this stuff doesn't just go away. These people don't just stop believing this.
Ryan, stop.
Yeah.
Cease. Shoot.
Thank
you.
Anti-Semites. Right, I should talk about this from this perspective because, there are maybe between 2 and 5 countries where anti-Semitism is actually not socially acceptable. I live in one of them, which is because of
History.
our country's special history with anti-Semitism. And in the 80s, we recognized that, well, we began to recognize that a huge part of our cultural heritage was our Jewish cultural legacy, like the cultural legacy of our Jewish communities. And we have a large party that regularly commits acts of anti-Semitism, but it's like we've gotten it to that point where you want to get, where when people say that, they're flung out of office and like disavowed by everyone, even their own party, because they can't officially admit their stance on anything like this.
Right.
Despite this, interestingly, in the Israel-Palestine conflict, historically, Austria has always sided with Palestine. Something to think about.
But
Oof.
we have to understand that extreme far-right, racist, anti-Semitic ideas did not get stamped out. Especially in Italy, they didn't get stamped out. Because we didn't vindicate Italy as much as we vindicated the Germans. I mean, this is also why Nippon Kaigi exists, I believe, right, Pac-Man? They didn't get as bad of it. They did not get the brunt of the "you fucked up" system.
Yeah.
It wasn't
The,
stamped out.
Nippon Kaigi is... Well, the thing is about that whole thing with Nippon Kaigi is that Japan hasn't been hit with the same level of condemnation for its participation in the Second World War as Germany has. Like, not even close. There are lots of reasons for this. Even though you could argue, quite successfully, might I add, that Japan committed even worse crimes than Nazi Germany. But I think it's because mainly of the cultural idea. Japan in its original state was a monarchy, like a proper monarchy. And it still is a monarchy. Like, the biggest thing that America wanted to do when they initially took over control of Japan post-war, one of the things they wanted to do was to destroy the monarchy. They wanted to remove the emperor.
Right. They did part of it. Let me get a book that I can talk about real quick. You can keep talking.
They didn't do it. They made him into a figurehead via the Constitution, a la the British monarch. But the truth of the matter is, not really. The monarch is a figurehead. They didn't actually abolish the institution of Japan. Like, Japan is not a republic. It acts like it acts like it is. It's like, oh, he's just here to hold up a sign and, you know, keep the monarchy going. But there is a distinct part of Japanese culture which almost requires that the monarchy remain. Very much the same as the English.
We got a donation from Ian Bundig. I think this is Shakti, someone I know.
Ooh. Not Comrade Zordon of Heroes?
No, not Comrade Zordon. All right. I grabbed the book to talk a little bit. In Japan, there was a thing after the war where the emperor had to abdicate godhood, basically. To my understanding. Because or at least abdicate central godhood on like an official level. If you want to read more, I highly recommend McFarlane's The Rush Hour of the Gods, which talks about how in post-war Japan, there was a large influx of new religious movements.
Oh yeah, huge. Like, very big.
Yeah, because there was a vacuum left by the emperor no longer being the God Man. But there were missionaries from all religions sent to Japan right after the war ended. Mormons, Christians in general, Islam, various other groups. And then there were also new religions that popped up. And I think we all know the most popular one. Well, the most known one. I wouldn't say popular, most infamous one. Better word for it.
Sarin gas,
Aum
sarin gas,
Shinrikyo.
sarin gas.
Aum Shinrikyo is a very important part of that story because there were new Buddhist, Shinto, Confucian, Christian sects that popped up. So Konkokyo, functional monotheism, is what it talks about in this book. PL Kyodan, Saicho no Ei, divine science and nationalism. Rissho Koshei Kai, Buddhism. Soko Gakkai. And then Aum Shinrikyo, which I highly recommend if you want to know more about Aum Shinrikyo. Please read Haruki Murakami's Underground. When we stomped out the religious aspect to a degree of Japan's fascistic natures, or like proclivities, but we didn't stamp out the nationalism part of it.
Nope, we did not. We did not stamp out the
like America was just like, okay, so we got some military bases in here. We're good.
We're good. What was that fucking guy that occupied a military base and killed himself in the 70s?
I don't know what it's called. There was actually a reason why they didn't do it. Why they didn't do that. It was because they wanted Japan to stay stable because, well, they wanted to use it as wanted to use the archipelago as a glorified aircraft carrier, so they could stage operations against the Soviets.
I forget what his fucking name was, but in the 1970s, a guy occupied a base to try to start an insurrection that would reinstate the full godhood of the emperor and restate the empire. Mishima or Mishimo, something like that.
It really wouldn't surprise me.
Yukio Mishima, filmmaker, playwright. actor, and ardent nationalist.
Japan's kind of crazy. I'm considering just like stop watching anime. I'm just gonna go to Chinese anime as the dangest I am. Just like only Chinese anime in this house.
Donghua, you mean?
Yeah. Donghua. I don't know how to say it.
Donghua, yeah.
I mean, most actual creators are, well, not most. A lot of the big ones are fairly left-leaning.
Yeah.
Well,
that's true. Yeah, a lot of the anime is left-leaning. Japan's politics suck at this point. Even though they have like the second largest opposition party, I believe, is communist. I don't know. People say they're more like social democrats, though. Like
they are like ultra sock them. Like they like the JCP. I love them to death. Don't get me wrong. They're great. They are like the ultimate sock them. They want communist revolution by reform. Number one. So they're already like literally the moment it would be like that guy who
Suzaku killed Rosa Luxemburg.
Yeah, Suzaku killed Rosa Luxemburg. No, like I know when I saw that name I fucking pissed myself. No. It's like that, you know that libertarian guy who wants to abolish the government in the US, right? Who ran for president? Can't remember. But it's like the JCP are like that guy in Japan with the government as well, in the sense that like their party platform is like they get elected. The moment they get elected, they put in sweeping reforms. And then the moment they get into power, abolish the JSDF in its entirety. As in, the Japanese military literally abolished.
Well...
Not a single rifle in Japan. Not one.
I think we've had
Not a single fighter jet.
I think we've had our discussion on Japan well enough. The last thing I want to remind you is that there was a New Zealand politician that called someone a boomer in the parliament.
Yes.
In parliament, she called I think conservative party member who heckled her for being a green. She said, "Okay, boomer." So remember, fellas, "Okay, boomer" is now the anthem that we must use against the fucking boomer cons.
I'm really starting to like Cuba's policy. No members in Congress over 60. You're banned. Get out, boomers.
So we've been going on for an hour now. I think we've covered everything. Does anyone have anything to promote?
Be gay, do crimes.
Be gay, do crime. Yep, I'm 100% okay with this.
Senna?
I mean, same shit.
Be crimes,
I'm very
do
fucking
gay.
out of it today. Yep.
Be crimes, do gay? I mean, yeah?
And anything besides just Shonen Ronin from you?
Nah, just Shonen Ronin. Got some cool videos on a anime called Food Wars that Posadas Backman voiced. It was insanely good video.
Alright.
Show.
Hey, I wrote and voiced that one, actually. Very proud of that video.
Alright, well, I think this is good for this week. This has been Dip Dap with Theo.
Hi.
Senna.
Hello. See ya.
You know, I'm just gonna say Shonen Ronin because I'm not gonna mispronounce it again.
Shonen Ronin.
Maybe.
And then Posadas Pac-Man.
The John Bolton of EML. Hi.
Yeah. And this has been an evening with comrades, and see you all next week.